Hello, hello. Welcome to season 5 of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them. I see way too many business people letting their businesses or their jobs run their lives versus them figuring out with real clarity about what they want their lives to look like and having their job or their business be the conduit to have that life that they absolutely love. I want to thank you so much for listening in to season 5. This season is filled with motivation, inspiration, leadership, and wisdom from some super interesting guests, and myself included. My hope is through our shared experiences, you will see a bit of yourself and move further into leading your own lit up life. If you're enjoying this podcast, please feel free to share with others and leave a rating, and a comment or two would be awesome too. Let's get going. Thanks again for being a part of our community.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am Debbie Heiser, and I am thrilled today to have my new friend Joanna with us. And Joanna is over across the pond from the States. But so it's like 4 o'clock, I think, your time now that we're taping. It's like 8 a.m. here. And that always perplexes me. That's that whole quantum time and everything, right? But what interested me about Joanna is we met through a mutual friend, my friend Erin Marcus, and we just hit it off. Like, we started talking, and it was almost like this. Well, I was reading about vibrational energy the other day, and how, like, the mastermind is this idea of sharing in perfect harmony, like this energy of harmony back and forth. And so I was thinking about that with us. Like, you just meet people sometimes, and you know that you want to be in their life and you want them to be in your life. And that's kind of how I felt when I first talked to you. And so it intrigues me. Joanna does work that's similar, but with a slightly different twist. And I'm not going to give that away. I'll let her talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us what you do, how you show up in service to the world.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Debbie. So I'm a former advertising agency director turned brand messaging consultant and somewhat client alignment coach. I'm from London. I host a leading podcast like yourself called Goals with Soul. And my real raison d'etre, the reason I show up, is because I get such pleasure helping visionary coaches and more recently corporate thought leaders to clarify their authentic message, raise their profile and their prices, and stand out from the crowd. It's about, for me, championing courageous women expressing their individuality in their business and guiding and inspiring that joining of the dots, so your unique brilliance can translate into being paid to be authentically yourself, whether that's in corporate or in entrepreneurship.
That's so cool. And so tell me too, Joanna, like, when you think about connecting the dots, I'm sure you kind of see some themes or things that, and I'm going to do both sides of this, but things that people struggle with when it comes to, because I find a lot of times my clients don't realize how brilliant they are. So to help them connect that dot, because they have to market themselves. So what do you find is kind of a, like, top 3 things that you see people struggle with that you help them solve?
Okay. Top one by a fair distance, visibility. And visibility is putting yourself forward. If you're perhaps in corporate or in consulting, it's promoting yourself. And certainly in online business, it's as literal as showing up in your online marketing. But I've realized, and I've gone through the transition of helping new coaches, new entrepreneurs who are fresh out the box, fresh into the industry. And over the last year or so, helping people who've been in the industry 2, 3, 5 or more years. And I realized that visibility takes 2 slightly different ways of expressing itself. First one's so obvious, you're not showing up. And I think that anyone can ascertain whether that's the case for themselves. And this is where, for the new coaches, they understand things like consistency and showing up and getting into that kind of routine. But I realized that it's about more than that. And actually, my own experience is that consistency can actually wear you out tremendously. And you have to get aligned with what consistency means to you. And it's not always as simple as the more you show up, the more business you get, or the better business you get. It's not quite that simple, which led me to understand that visibility is often the hiding of their truth and what they really want to do in their business. And this one, so relevant for often ex-corporate entrepreneurs and coaches who we come out of the corporate space and we're like, go at it, full pedal to the metal. We're just like, we got it. But we're not doing what we really love. And we start to share a message that seems profitable, seems like the right thing to do about our specialism and our expertise, but has actually led us to a place that is either at or close to burnout, no longer bringing us joy, absolutely preventing that sustainability in business. So for me, it's that visibility piece to bring forth what you really want to talk about, say, so you can attract clients that really want to do that work and are going to be a perfect match for you.
So why do you think we women tend to hide? Like when you said that, that clicked with me, as far as I run into that with a lot of my clients too. Why is it that we women hide? What are some things, what's your philosophy on that?
Okay, well, I do have some thoughts on the matter. Surprise, surprise. Well, look, I mean, everybody knows that society has created a fact that women often stand back and hide. I saw it through all my years in corporate. I did that myself. And in fact, had I realized far sooner what visibility really looked like and how to stand up for my opinions and do it with grace, but do it in a way that allows me to be visible to the people that matter, perhaps my corporate career would have continued. Perhaps not, because I'm in a place that I absolutely adore with my own business and doing that heart-centered work. But making that transition over to entrepreneurship, suddenly you can't hide. You've really got to decide how you show up. And I realized that that conditioning had, yes, held me back. But also there are some more pernicious reasons that women get into the habit of hiding. And it's a lot to do with getting shit done. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, you are. I have a water bottle for those of you on video that says the same thing.
In fact, I read an article recently. I think it was in the Harvard Business Review, but it might have been McKinsey. Forgive me, this is going to be one of them too. But anyway, and it said that when they did the research, they found that women have so much on their plates and want to get their head down and want to get stuff done. And for some reason, we see visibility as a threat to just being able to get our head down. Because even if you think about that terminology, head down, it's a kind of very insular, hidden piece of work, very different from the visible external piece that we have to get used to doing. And there's a kind of threat to our safety that if we become more visible, there'll be too much to do. We'll be overwhelmed, we'll be exhausted. And I know from my own experience, most women who are doing this high level work are running households, they're running businesses, they're running a variety of different aspects of their lives, and oftentimes holding many people and responsibilities. And I think that even if they're doing it unconsciously, they equate higher visibility with higher workload, and therefore something that they don't necessarily want to lean into.
Yeah, Joanna, that is really intriguing, because that would be a double bind, right? Like they really want this, but yet they have this message, this subconscious message that it's going to take so much more work. And I don't know about you, but I found, sure, you can get in the hustle a little bit and you have to like self-regulate, but so many times when you actually step in, it opens up. And one of the things I learned when I was in Paris is Parisians, Europeans, I think in general, yourself included, like expand time, right? So like there's this expansion of time where things get done, but we worry so much and keep our head down. And I don't know about you too, Joanna, but one of the things I remember years ago, and my then husband said to me, you're setting yourself up for failure, because I used to make New Year's resolutions that were front and back, like, single spaced on a piece of notebook paper of all the things I was going to do that coming year. And he's like, you set yourself up for failure before you even start. So why do you do that? And so as you talk about that, there's a book too that I read called Lean Out, which is, she worked for the woman that wrote Lean In. And so it's kind of a play on words, but she talks about that too, around, that we feel like we just have to add one more thing to our plate. And also this thing where women are taking care of that. And that's a generalization, but for the most part, that women are managing a lot in the household. And like, how do we equal that out a little bit? And I'm not all like, I am woman, hear me roar, but there are some disparities there. And I could see then why it's like, head down, I don't want to add one more task to my list. So when you get them past that, what happens?
Right. Well, before I
Okay.
answer that, just something I have to share, because we were talking about visibility and the reasons why.
Yeah.
And I just realized that I can't move on without talking about fear of judgment, because that just stopped me in my tracks. I mean, yes, we can talk about perfectionism, and we can talk about imposter syndrome and the inner critic, and we all know the lists of these little limiting beliefs that show up in a big way, particularly when we're trying to promote ourselves. But for me, fear of judgment stood out particularly. And I see this a lot with very professional, high achieving women, because we have grown up in this sort of professional, glossy image in corporate. And suddenly the idea of being very vulnerable and authentic in ways that, let's be honest, in the heart-centered coaching environment, it's mandatory. If you really want to be happy, you want to attract clients, you cannot just say, well, I'm not going to be my real self. I'm not saying you need to share everything about yourself, not at all. But there's an element of authenticity through messaging that has to shine if you want to attract what I like to call soul clients, if you want to do the work that's purpose-driven and will light you up in a sustainable way. So consequently, moving into that authenticity, vulnerability can bring up all these fears of fear of judgment. When I first launched my business as a business coach at the time, doing more generalized business work, even changing my job description on LinkedIn from my previous ad agency role into self-employed, running my own business, business coach, I was like, who do I think I am? What will they think? I can just declare myself a business coach and open my doors for business. What will they think? I mean, that was the starting point, let alone, and I moved through that barrier. And then within 6 months, I went through a large amount of burnout in my business, through a lot of different things that were going on, which I'd love to share if they're relevant or they come up. But the biggest thing that I then had to go through was, as a result of that, I dialed in what I like to think of as divine feminine and going with the flow and leaning out, to your point. And then wanted to move my messaging into genuinely talking about more spiritual aspects of business and some things that have really served me and my clients. And as a now breathwork facilitator and pranic healer, to add to my 20 years of ad agency experience, I wanted to bring all of that into what I do and how I help my clients. And perhaps you can imagine how I felt starting to talk about breathwork as a business strategy, thinking about those women and men from my old ad agency, seeing, hearing, watching. I was just like, oh my word. And that took time to kind of overcome. And my podcast was an amazing cathartic place for me to try that, to experiment with it and eventually get really comfortable with simply being me. And of course, the beauty of that isn't only that I felt really proud, of course I did, and I enjoyed it, but I started to attract clients I really wanted to work with, who understood my work and really appreciated my approach to it. And whereas before, that wasn't always the case. And that was part of leading to that burnout that I mentioned.
Yeah. And I love that too, because coming from corporate myself, there's this, well, and even in society, we live in this society that promotes competition, right? And perfectionism. And there's one of my mentors, Peter Crone, he's actually from England, but he lives in California. I just love this quote, and I've been sharing it everywhere. He says, perfectionism is a coping mechanism for the belief that there's something wrong with you. And he said, good news, there isn't. So feel free to relax now.
I like that.
But I think about that. And I think too about how for, 20 plus years while I was in corporate, there's a lot of this getting shit done and like the divine masculine, right? That's the structure and the do. And
Or wounded masculine, maybe.
yes. And wounded feminine, like
Yeah.
when you look at it. And so it was interesting because I know I've had my journey of tapping back into my feminine and tapping back into the flow and the creativity and the innovation and all of those things that come with being in your feminine. But also, like for me, there has to be a harmony between the two, right? And so when you think about that and you think about healing, because we were talking about wounded, I teach a class at Gonzaga University that's called Foresight and Strategy. And really, it should probably be called healing because it digs in and it's about integrating the mind and the heart and the spirit and your body, like being aware of like where you're feeling tension and pain and all of these types of things. And what I find is it's a very cathartic, healing place for people. And as leaders, whether we're leading our own business, which then we're helping clients, or leading in a corporate or a career type of situation, it's all about self-awareness and healing ourselves in order to then move forward and not take things personally, not, feel like I have to rescue people or tell people how to live their life or those types of things. Tell me like your journey to getting here, because you've talked about a little bit, you've tapped into that a little bit. Your journey, like what were some pivotal moments for you that said, I need to exit this more structured piece, this more corporate environment? And I'm putting words in your mouth, but it almost feels like there was for lack of a better word, calling, right? Like I'm a firm believer that we all have spiritual DNA. We all have this like thing that we feel, whether we're a healer or a connector or whatever it is. And then the work that we do helps create situations, hopefully, where we're doing that. So tell me some pivotal moments for you that helped you realize you needed to step back and do something different.
Absolutely. I mean, just to say, I was your archetypal good girl,
Yeah.
firstborn, first one in my whole family that went to university, got the big job at Ogilvy and Mather and, all the things. And I just carried on that good girl trajectory, doing the things, climbing the ladder, got married, had a baby, bought a house, everything that you'd expect. But I think the first big pivotal moment was when I actually gave birth to my eldest. She's now at university becoming a nurse.
Nice.
And my birth plan was beautiful, all about the water birth and so on.
Yeah.
But what transpired was that I had a massive hemorrhage and nearly died, and had an emergency hysterectomy to save my life. Spent 2 weeks in intensive care, PTSD, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was pretty dramatic. I became a maternal near miss statistic and was interviewed later, and big deal, 29 years old. And that, like any big dramatic experience like that really gets your mind worrying about what why am I here? What am I meant for?
Right.
A few things dropped into place then. First of all, a 7-year quest to complete my family, which resulted in baby daughter twins being born in California in 2011. So I now have 3 daughters, very, very blessed. But going through that surrogacy journey, which also included a divorce and a remarriage in the same period, was a lot of life change. And during that, I decided I need to find something different to do that allowed me to be more creative. But I didn't find him. And I went back to corporate and just put my head down for years longer, right through the birth of the twins, back to work again, back to the ad agency. But it was really the pandemic that shifted things, because the universe gave me a big kick up the butt and laid me off, basically, made me redundant from the ad agency. I worked primarily on travel brands, and we all know what happened to travel. And I found myself either having a choice to find another job in advertising or to finally do the thing. And thankfully, that was exactly the journey I took. But it didn't change who I was. And like you've spoken about, Debbie, you know, that wounded masculine, the striving, the doing, the over-efforting, over-proving. And that had been me for so long, right through my surrogacy journey. I mean, I made that happen, but boy, did I push to make that happen. And I burned out so badly in that first 6 to 8 months because I put everything into every minute of every single hour of every single day. It was like, I launched 3 programs, a podcast, a membership, you know, I was on every social media channel. It was just crazy what I was doing. And I'd leapt in with this messaging of take action, get it done, be accountable. And I started coaching in that space. I was sharing CEO strategies, helping people see themselves as businesses, and working with new entrepreneurs who, quite frankly, couldn't get shit done. And I was like, well, this should seem like a perfect match. But it took the contrast and the experience to realize that energetically it was a mismatch, because it was leading me to over-serving, over-efforting, to pull them through and get them to do it, to the point where I was doing doing my own clients' assignments. You know, it was like just pushing so hard. And I went into this burnout phase, which I love how you described, you know, the flow and the divine feminine. And that's basically what I then went into. I spent a summer barefoot in my local woods here in East London, listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks, but also thinking about, you know, what does this business really look like for me in a sustainable way? And how can I bring what I love most into my business instead of what I learned and didn't appreciate? And this is where the idea of specializing in messaging really came through, rather than doing generalized business coaching. Because obviously coming out of advertising, it was something that I had a lot of experience in, but I didn't realize my passion for it until I started changing my own messaging. And instead of talking to pain points, instead of agitating people's struggles, instead of selling something that I didn't love, even though I was good at it, it wasn't what I adored. And I started shifting and created a process I called Brand Epics, which was about bringing the whole of you into your business, finding what the passions are, finding what the experience is, what your character's like, where it all links together. And oftentimes clients will say to me, but, you know, I'm multi-passionate, I'm multifaceted. It's like, no, we'll bring it together. There is a coherence here. You just are too close to your own work to see it. You're too embedded and entrenched in what you've done, how you've made money, what you think you're good at, and also fear of judgment, fear of really bringing your true brilliance in. And that's been the joy in my work since that point. Everything pivoted. My business took on a new level, not just of income, but of impact and joy and connection. You know, this the way we're sat here together. I wasn't in that place then. I called myself a lone wolf because I didn't have time to make connections. I was too damn busy, right? And now getting shit done. Getting shit done, right? And now it's like opening to the beauty of connections and the breadcrumbs, the synchronicities. So those were the big pivotal moments that really made all the difference to who I help, what I do, and also who I've become, who I be, as we say.
The human being part of us, right? Oh, thank you for sharing that. So I have a couple of other questions before we finish up. One is top 3 books that you would recommend.
Oh, right. Top 3 books. I knew I should be more prepared, but I do a lot of reading. My only problem is I never remember because I read them all on my Kindle. I don't know if you ever do Kindle reading, but I'm not talking about like the shiny, you know, the shiny tech one. I mean, the old style Kindle.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get to see the book. So I'm just going to open my Kindle app. Right. Book right now, Conscious Language and the Logos of Now by Robert Tennyson Stevens. I wouldn't say it's one of my top ever books, but it's adding a lot to my understanding of self-talk and the language we use. And as a messaging specialist, thinking about how we create our content and our copy and how we speak, really, really revealing to be able to start understanding the subtleties of language and the changes we can make. That's one I want to share with you. One that's actually super, super readable, which I've got on my bookshelf, so I'm going to lean over. Excuse me one sec. Here we go. It's get myself back in the space. I don't suppose your podcast guests normally leap out of their chair with quite such enthusiasm. Right. I really.
Oh, I love this book that you're about to show.
Okay. Yes. Jen Sincero, right?
Yes. Any of her work actually is
all
really
of her
good.
work's great. This one I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
You're a badass at making money, master the mindset of wealth. So readable, so much fun. And all of us in this business need to master our money mindset. And I think that was really approachable, really easy one. And finally, I'm going to share one by a mentor of mine, the lovely Vanessa Halleck. And she's written a book called Paid to Be You. And, when you talk about magnetizing clients, and this is what I teach my clients, it's something that I lean into. One of the things that really struck me was she, or maybe a DM's assistant, sent me a link once, said, we're giving away free copies of our book. Do you want one? And I went, yeah. And I started to read her book, couldn't put it down, and hired her as a coach like 2 weeks later. And I think sometimes when you have a message that's so potent, just simply expressing it and sharing it can be enough to really bring people to you that, going to light you up and do great work together. So
fantastic.
3 books.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those. And then if you had one thing, and you may have already talked about it, and if you did, that's fine, you can say so. But what is one thing that you want to leave our listeners with, just, as a nugget of wisdom, as a gold nugget, right? That's there for the taking.
Yeah. Something I see so frequently that makes me kind of frustrated is that people think that the answer is a strategy like get their SEO going on their website, or master Facebook ads, or become really good at audience growth on Instagram. And I think that we're hardwired to want a strategy that we can follow. And there isn't one perfect strategy. And this upsets me because people often, and I can rail against bro marketing strategies and things that are marketing that's out of integrity. But when people say this is the one thing, and the reality is, obviously I work within messaging, and I believe wholeheartedly that you really have to understand what you're about, who you serve, and be really authentic. And that, if there is one thing, that's like the ring that rules them all. Because if you can get that heart into your piece, it's not about hiring the copywriter or getting the website developer. It's about getting that piece done so everything else works. And if you're out of alignment with that, you're just going to have to work so much harder. Like, why are we getting to burnout? It's because we're having to struggle because we haven't got the fundamentals and the foundations. And I know you work with this with your clients too. You've got to get your foundations sorted. And for me, that's the messaging specialism. And you have to pair that with deep alignment with your marketing strategies. Whatever's worked for that top coach over there or that guru may, but probably won't be the thing that will be your big breakthrough. And you have to discover that for yourself.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, Joanna, because I've even been like reevaluating a little bit myself in the fact that I can always tell when I start to pop out of congruency, because connection is a really high value for me. And part of it might've been because I was out for 14 days sick by myself at my house, right? As a huge extrovert, but like reevaluating a little bit. And whenever I know that I'm popping out of congruency, or maybe a little too much in my masculine and not kind of melding the two. And so thank you for saying that, because that just resonated with me. And it makes me step back and realize sometimes that as I get going and try to get shit done, I like move so fast that my heart starts to not constrict, but I don't keep my heart as open. And I can get in that head down, like do the work thing. So yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. So as we come to a close, Joanna, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they want to see more about what you do, where would you send them?
Okay. So great place to find me is over on Instagram. The handle there is IamJo.Ingram. I am on LinkedIn as Joanna Ingram. And if you want to tune into my messaging and manifesting style podcast, it's called Goals with Soul. finally, to say that if you are a coach working in the industry and you want to understand the latest messaging strategies, I've got some free training which you can grab hold of if you go to joannaingram.link/uplevel.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Joanna, for taking the time today to share with everyone. And it's been a real pleasure. And with that, folks, it's a wrap, and we will see you next week. And if any of you would like to have a little bit more clarity and kind of understand where you want to create some congruency, please reach out to me. My website's in the show notes, and sign up for a clarity call. I promise you'll be clearer after that 30 minutes than you were before you walked into it. And with that, everyone have a great week. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening. The song Right is co-written and sung by Miss Jackie Wilson and her collaborators Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee. And a huge shout out to them for allowing us to use this perfect song. Everyone have a fabulous week, and I'll talk to you next week.